one of those sad stories with good news attached to it. A man was incarcerated for 17 years for a crime he never committed. He has now been exonerated. Let me bring your attention to Baltimore City. Marilyn Mosby, the state's attorney, launched an investigation into this wrongful conviction. Now, why did she do this? Well, under her leadership, which is progressive, by the way, she created something called the Conviction Integrity Unit. There are various forms of this popping up around the US, but basically these are trained attorneys who are in fact prosecutors. They work for the prosecutor's office, but their job, their goal is to look at previous convictions and see if it needs to be overturned. Let me bring your attention to Mr. David Morris. David Morris has spent almost 17 years in prison for a murder that he never committed. On Wednesday, a judge threw out his conviction following a review of evidence that determined Morris was wrongfully charged and found guilty in 2005, according to the office of the state's attorney for Baltimore City. Let's put up a picture of state's attorney Marilyn Mosby. I had the great opportunity to interview both of them, her and her husband, on my radio show. All right, she is a remarkable public servant. Now, the Baltimore Circuit Judge, give you background of how this happened. The Baltimore Circuit Judge, Charles Peters, granted what's called a prosecutor's request to throw out the old conviction of Mr. Morris. After the Mid-Atlantic Innocent Project brought the case to the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Conviction Integrity Unit. The unit began a reinvestigation in 2018, ultimately finding Morris should not have been convicted according to the state's attorney's office. Here is Mr. Morris' first meal as a free man with his cousin. That's Jocelyn, all right? Free meal, good meal, free man. This case exemplifies, according to Ms. Mosby, this case exemplifies the deeply damaging nature of the historical failures of the criminal justice system and our duty as prosecutors to address the wrongs of the past. You're damn right. On behalf of the state, let me extend my sincerest apologies to Mr. Morris and his family for the unspeakable trauma inflicted upon him as a result of this wrongful conviction. He would never be able to get those years back. And I'm talking to all of those who may criticize the movement of Black lives. I want you to understand that this young man is not a silo. He's not a one-off. He's indicative of an expression of the culture. And that is why you have to intentionally create an integrity unit. How crazy does that sound? You're the prosecutor's office and you have to create a sub-department called the Conviction Integrity Unit. Well, damn it, why? Because there was no integrity in the conviction in the first place. And so now you have to create these special departments of individuals who really believe in actual justice rather than prosecution. The oath you swear to as a prosecutor is to uphold the law, to be fair, to stand for justice, not for wins, not for prosecution, but for justice. It gets deeper. Morris, 18 years of age at the time, this is the background, had been identified on the scene of the 2004 murder of Mustafa Carter and arrested by a police officer who was the key witness. According to state's attorney for Baltimore City Director of Communications, Morris was convicted in 2005, was sentenced to life, suspended all but 50 years, according to the state's attorney's office. The CIU investigation concluded that an additional suspect other than Morris had been identified and investigated before Morris's trial. But this was not disclosed to his defense attorneys. That's called a violation of discovery. Nor was the fact that the arresting officer had a previous misconduct finding, another discovery violation, according to the state's attorney office. That police officer was much later convicted of various crimes relating to fraud, and placed on our do not call list, a list that we published last week, where we believe the officer is no longer credible to call as a witness in any case. In addition, the unit found the DNA on the victim's pants did not match Mr. Morris. And statements of the only identifying witness were contradictory. Yep, there you have it. It's systemic. It's connected to an overall dynamic. And the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act, you know what it would have done if implemented, if law? It would have kept a track record of officers like that one. But we don't have it. So prosecutors, without the federal government's help, they have to come up with progressive means like this in order to implement criminal justice reform in their jurisdictions. Madam, I appreciate you being on the program. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, this just goes back to that our justice system, our system has been an easy way out to protect officers, to protect prosecutors, and not to protect actual people. So it really is difficult when we see these things. I mean, I'm so glad that this innocent man is released, but it's difficult to see that he had to spend 17 years in jail. Yeah. And this is why we must continue to fight against this system that is incarcerating masses of amounts of people.
Yeah, very well said.